Hey everybody, Christian from the Arc and Dev team here, and I'm here to tell you all about our current project, Artis Arcana. Artis Arcana is a dungeon crawler survival game where you have to kill enemies to get loot to craft into items that are necessary for survival. The general idea of the game is a mage locked only on his two axes, so basically D-pad movement, and he must make his way through dungeon after dungeon fighting enemies and bosses. This game was started for the Kindred Game Jam. It lasted 1 week, and me and a few buddies from college decided the best way to use the theme, craft your own magic, was to make a survival dungeon crawler where any specialty magic requires items from elemental slimes and survival items crafted from other enemies. With that idea in place, I immediately made a sprite wizard with movement in 4 directions and a small sprite sheet of 3 tiles, later quite a few more. From that point, I was pretty proud of my first day's work of art and mild functionality. I ended up building most of the map during the first day as well. Just for notice, I made this project in Godot as well. That is my current game engine that I prefer using, as it's the only one I know anything about and can learn quickly. During day 2, me and my friend did a lot more art, and I began working on designing the crafting system. It didn't really go anywhere, and instead of making a real dynamic inventory, I just locked all the items into place, and then used an animation where they go from visible to invisible depending on if you have the items or not. Besides that, I started designing enemies and things like that. Nothing too detailed, but day 3 was the day that I finally started adding enemies to the game. I started off with Fire Slime. I got his movement tracking figured out, and I got it to where he would hurt me, but for some reason I ran into an issue where I would take damage when I felt like I shouldn't have been, and it was very, very confusing. Like, I would be far away from him, but I would take damage like I collided with him, and I couldn't figure out if it was an issue with the player or the slime itself. I decided it was the fault of the slime, made a few tweaks, and it almost worked, but I decided that that would be a later thing. I also began working on the 2 bosses for the game, an eyeball named Ivan, because I'm absolutely hilarious, and a disgruntled ice cube, and of course I named him Dick for short. Day 4 was a mix of a little bit of progress and a lot of mess. I finally added projectiles to kill enemies with. It worked, except one, the spell looked like an ice cream cone, which definitely did not look nice. And secondly, for some reason 2 of the attacks were firing at all points in time, and the second firing would be in different places, which was very, very concerning. I couldn't figure it out. I had no idea, and I decided that I don't know what to do. I'm just gonna push it off. I did some more art and other things, but at this point you understand that I just worked on art every day with my friend as well. Day 5, I decided to tell my friend who was helping me with the art that if I couldn't figure it out, I'd turn this into a puzzle game, because I thought it was the enemy's fault that all this was happening and not the player controller's fault. And I ended up trapping the extra spell in a wall at the start of the game, and it worked for the most part, except for some reason the enemies would just go straight for that wall with the player spell in it. And that's when I realized there was another player under the floor the whole time, because I decided to instance the player with a singleton to where he would always be instanced. I didn't realize that there was the issue of me having him in the skill tree. I mean, not the skill tree, the tree of the game was making a second one. So under the floor the entire time, even back near the beginning, was another player character, and I just had no clue. But I fixed that, and pretty much just fixing that fixed like every issue I had. I got the crafting fixed. I pretty much had everything fixed. There weren't really any issues anymore. I ended up getting killable enemies working, all the hitboxes I fixed, and I got some more enemies in and a few lootable chests. Day 6 was a big grind. I finished up all the regular enemies and began work on the bosses. I added in the ice attack and the water attack. I decided to make the water attack a timed attack based on like a timer until it runs out instead of like one specific attack, unlike the ice and the fireball. And I got the crafting done, the item hotbar done, and I beat the game a few times to make sure everything worked. And then day 7, I worked on the project like the whole day. Like, I didn't really take many breaks. I made my friend do decoration while I worked on the shitty UI and coded the final bits, made sure the ice wall in Ivan's room was there to where it would only disappear if you shot a fireball at it or use the ice pick only after he died. That way you can't just immediately leave the room. And then I spent the other part of the day just adding sound effects for the most part. Big shout out to Hamish, a guy who was in the Kindred Discord, who ended up making the music that you're hearing right now, and also, which is the music that's in the game currently. I'm also currently commissioning him to make me more music for the game, so I'm really excited to look at that. I'll link his stuff down below if you guys are interested in commissioning him. He's really chill. So I added all the sound effects, I added the music, and I decided that's good enough. I'm going to bed after I fix my itch.io page. Afterwards, I went to bed and woke up the next day to see only 18 people had submissions out of the 100 or so who entered the contest. How did we do, you might wonder? Well, currently I have no clue because the Game Jam voting period doesn't end for about another day, but I wasn't going to leave editing of this video for like a 12-hour period at best, so I decided to get this recording out of the way. Alrighty, this is Editing Christian in the studio, and by studio I mean into my bed. The results are in. Congratulations to the people who made the Crypt, Empty Shell, and Slimes Can't Do Magic for being in the top 3 and getting all the praise from Kindred. Congratulations, guys. We ended up coming 5th, and it was mostly due to how buggy our web version was, but I'm overall very happy with this, and I'm glad we did so well. Back to the video. Current progress. At its current stage, I have a tutorial level that gives the player space to learn simple concepts like, shooting, dashing. I made sure the tab bar that has all your movement options and attack options and button keybinds and all that is a pop-up thing. So when you press the tab button, it'll drop and pop up. So if you need a reminder without quitting the game, you can just look at that. I'm gonna improve the system later, but that's what it currently is. But basically I wanted to teach the player simple concepts, like it's easier to kill enemies in tight hallways, big rooms have a lot of enemies in them, or at least more than you've been used to, and every level ends with a boss level. Those were concepts that I felt like adding. I also added a teleporter past the boss room that will lead to the next level. It's not actually a teleporter, it's a magic circle with a very nice animation that my friend Alex did for me. He's he is my head artist for the game currently, and his work is amazing. And then I used that to connect it to the level 3 map that I made. And by level 3, I mean level 3 difficulty. I plan on using it as a level 3 map later in development once I actually have level 1, level 2, that kind of thing in development. I started designing some boss art for future dungeon encounters and things like that, and I currently am working on my first level 1 as well. I have the map design done, so it's a matter of just adding objects to kind of fill in the space. And I also revamped all the shadow angles to where I think the map looks a bit more 3D than it did before, using the magic of shadows, so that's nice. My future plans involve a total of 5 levels plus the tutorial, where each level gets more and more difficult, and you can find rarer and more important items, and the harder difficulties has harder enemies, that kind of thing. And the bosses get stronger and whatnot. But I don't plan on doing it to where there's only actually 5 levels. On the earlier levels, I plan on having like 5 to 8 total variants at the very least. That will be randomly picked once you beat the tutorial and whatnot. And on top of that, there will also be, different bosses and that kind of thing per each randomized level. So if you keep dying on level 1, you're not beat, and you get back to it in the same level 2 you already beat. The higher up levels, since they're a lot more detailed and require a lot more effort, I'm planning on kind of doing like a pyramid shape. But basically there will be multiple variants of levels for each level to prevent boredom, as you constantly get kicked in the dick and sent back to level 1 or the tutorial level, depending on how it balances out and how I decide to do that. I plan on 13 to 20 total levels within the classes of tutorial to level 5, and then 11 to 14 different bosses to keep things interesting and not bad. And if need be, you best bet I'll be adding more to make sure the game feels good. The level system is very simple. You start in the tutorial, you beat through it, and then anytime after, during that same gameplay cycle of like you've run the game, you will get sent back to level 1 every time you die, and not the tutorial unless you die in the tutorial. Other than that, I don't have any other specialty systems, so you make it to level 5, you get sent back to level 1 if you die. But if you beat level 5, you're an epic gamer, and that's awesome. But yeah, it makes, because not only would that make winning feel better, in my opinion, the items and the things you get in previous levels are very important for the success in later levels, and I want each person to have a unique path to victory. I feel like that's important. Okay. I think that's as far as I've gotten for my game development currently, and I don't want this video to drone on too long either. If you liked what you saw, maybe like and subscribe, and if you really liked what you saw, consider becoming a patron. Any support is much appreciated. Also, there's a link to my Discord down below, and the links to Hamish, the guy who did the music for me, and I hope you guys enjoyed and have a good one.